I am going to switch it over. We should have a screen here showing her starting right
Views about
now.
place, stories, and eagle intelligence. This talk is based largely on a blog I wrote back in March of this year when I was really thinking a lot about what it would feel like, look like, think like to be an eagle. Place, as writer Tom Van Doren points out, can be understood as an embodied, lived, and meaningful environment. Bald eagles clearly have a sense of place. Their territories are woven with layers of attention, meaning, and experience. Spots to hunt, perch, and hide from the weather, materials to build and replenish their nests, and mates and family to bond and care for. Eagles have neighbors beyond counting. Squirrels, mice, raccoon, rabbits, muskrat, mink, coyotes, deer, prairie dogs, trout, catfish, suckers, turtles, frogs, people, and many species of birds, just to name a few of the vertebrates that can be symbiotes, dinner, intruders, competitors, and even companions, depending on the situation, the time of year, the location, and the species. Eagles have a lot to keep track of. And if you look at the screen, you'll see I put out a couple pictures that sort of illustrate those things. So we've got favorite perches and one. The skywalk. We've got animals that we see quite a bit of. That would be more or less commensals. For example, the red-bellied woodpeckers who come and filch nesting material and look for scraps at the bottom of the nest. We have the merry maids that might clean the nest or might be dinner depending on the situation. And then we have unwelcome visitors like red-tailed hawks. We also have a lot of bonding activities. So certainly copulation, as shown at lower left, is one of them. But we also have nest building, a really important form of bonding for eagles, and the way in which eagle parents care for their young. While instinct is a significant part of eagle behavior, the word implies that they are passively experiencing the places they inhabit. Something happens to them, and they respond to it. But it is hard to believe, for me at least, that eagles don't also connect actions with causes and outcomes, especially when our observations show them actively interpreting and influencing their surroundings. We've watched eagles prune sticks from favorite flyways and perches, clear sight lines, strip bark from branches targeted for removal, cope with bad weather together, and take advantage of food resources in unexpected ways. They have food preferences, fish, distinct bonding styles, unique behaviors, and even personalities. When watchers look into the nest, they see something of themselves looking back. And I want to talk about that a little bit. So let's start with unexpected food. For me, a really great example of that would be the placenta cowgetty at the North Nest, right? I did not anticipate that. But something we really also see eagles do is take advantage of their surroundings when they're constructing their nests. So depending on where you are, you might see a lot of corn husks, you might see a lot of grasses, you might see them using different kinds of sticks, you might see them using sort of not really different building techniques, but piling their nests up or constructing them in different ways. So we do see a lot of variability in that behavior. We also see distinct bonding styles. So everybody will remember, mom on top at Decorah this year, right? But then we saw something else going on at Decorah North, and there's a nest down in Fulton, Illinois that has 3 eagles, 2 males and a female. After the males lost their first mate, they recruited another female to join their triplet. So eagles really do have different preferences. They can also be a lot more social than we realize. We kind of tend to think about eagles as the lone noble bird, right? And they are very, very territorial when they're on their territories. But off their territories, as we've seen at the flyway, they're quite social. And it's been really rewarding and interesting to get a glimpse at that aspect of eagle life. So bald eagle studies done before the species decline found that they were quite cautious of human beings, unlikely to approach them and really easily disturbed. Now, as the map shows, that has changed for at least some eagles, right? The opposite really seems to be true of many eagles. They came back to a landscape full of people that had very different attitudes about birds of prey. So they came back, they've been extirpated, they're almost gone, they come back, and yet people aren't shooting at them. They're cherished, they're protected, there are legal consequences for harming them. Eagles habituated individually in generation, so that eagles now nest over bike trails in Decorah, as you all know, behind apartment buildings in Minneapolis, and near automobile plants in Chicago. The plight of bald eagles changed people's minds about bald eagles, which changed bald eagles, which changed people's minds about bald eagles even more. And if you think about it, when you watch the camera, so you've been watching these families, maybe you've been watching them for a while, as you've watched them, your perceptions about eagles have changed. Your ideas about eagles have changed. So the eagle sort of reached back in and changed you, right? And maybe changed the way you thought about wild lands and wild animals. So as we've learned about them, I wouldn't say that they're learning about us. They aren't, but they've certainly been influencing us. It's really a very complicated story, an entangled state of becoming, as theoretical physicist Karen Barad puts it. The Oxford Dictionary defines a landscape as all the visible features in the area of a countryside or land. But our eagles live in a place, with all that word implies: history, meaning, entangled stories, entangled existences, and complex lives. And I think one of the interesting aspects of living in a place is, now that we've had May switch over both at Decorah and the North Nest, you can really see how a new eagle comes in and sort of learns about the area, maybe with some teaching or influence from the older, established, more familiar eagle. So that's been something that's interesting to me, because again, many of these behaviors have their roots in instinct, but that doesn't mean that learning doesn't play a role, right? Do bald eagles have internal lives and intelligence? We get asked this a lot, and at one point, I don't know that my answer would have been no, but it certainly would have been a common answer. They have many of the behaviors we see in birds like crows, which are renowned for their intelligence: language, delinquency, insight, emotion, frolic, passion, wrath, mom's mad face, right? Risk-taking and awareness. Eagles organize in social multi-age groups away from their territories. Again, we see this a lot in the flyway. They follow consistent migration paths between winter and summer grounds, as Brett's research has taught us. They select and retain mates. They build large complex nests. They incubate and brood young in challenging conditions. They teach their young. They learn from life events, and they recognize and remember things on their territories. Eagles have internal lives and intelligence, and eagles know who they are. Having said that, right, like that's all well and good, but has anyone actually conducted tests on eagle intelligence, and how could we assess it? Researcher Dr. Louis Lefebvre, I hope I'm saying that correctly, compiled an innovation database for over 3,800 species of birds as part of a research project investigating the relationship between innovativeness and residual brain size in birds. His study found a correlation between the two. The families Corvidae, no surprise, Accipitridae, eagles belong to that, and Laridae ranked at the top with over 200 innovations for each family. Eagles had the third highest number of innovations in the Accipitridae, with 18 overall, although they scored a little lower on the diversity of their innovations, which means they do innovate, but they tend to innovate in the same way, if that makes sense. But I would like to see more study on this, since we've seen a very diverse range of behavior at the nests we watch, and eagle social gatherings might give them a chance to transmit new ways of hunting, fishing, and even playing. So traditional biological science insisted that researchers think about animals in very limited ways. Since science didn't recognize animal intelligence or emotional capacity, researchers were encouraged to think of animals as automatons, machines that perform functions according to a set of coded instructions. I believe that our unwillingness to recognize the internal lives of animals was a failure of imagination and observation that was anthropomorphic in its own right. Instincts, all animals, including human animals, you, me, all of us watching the eagles, have instincts. But instincts do not preclude intelligence. Non-human intelligences might not think, reason, or feel like us, but they still think, reason, and feel. So let's talk a little bit about anthropomorphism. When is it wrong? In thinking about animals, we need to respect that their emotions and intelligences might look very different from ours. We need to enter their umwelt, their experiential world of sight, sound, feel, taste, desires, wants, needs, and even histories. Failing to do so is disrespectful to our fellow travelers and can have disastrous consequences to them and to us. Having said that, is anthropomorphism always bad? I don't think so. We call mom beautiful, because she is, and DM2 handsome, and we apply our terms of gendered beauty to both of them, right? But we are recognizing their beauty and uniqueness, and that is a wonderful thing. It goes bad when we let our definitions and ways of thinking blind us to what bald eagles and other animals are actually doing, as if we insisted DM2 couldn't care for his young, male, or mom couldn't defend her territory, female. Right? I was hurt several years back returning falcons to a nest after banding. It was pouring rain. It was bad. And Bob was like, I am not going up there. So May, a very aggressive adult female falcon, was in the nest box. I assumed she would know I was returning her young. I was super new to the work and didn't worry about her reaction. So she flies out and she tags me just boom right in the arm, which frankly I deserved. I was dumb. Fortunately, none of the young were hurt. I made the mistake of assuming we assessed the situation the same way, which we did not. A classic example of anthropomorphism gone wrong. Can anthropomorphism ever be helpful? I can think of a number of examples, including, once we look into an animal, at an animal and begin to see it in richer emotional terms, we care more about it and we will do more things to preserve it. Earlier this year, I answered a call from someone who loved the North Eagles. They were going through the pandemic all alone and were very concerned that DN12 would be sad and lonely without a sibling. In talking about DN12 and the North Nest, we were able to talk about our own fear and sadness in the face of a global pandemic. In this case, an anthropomorphic projection led to inquiry. Am I right? Is this true? And a helpful conversation. So connecting with an animal can be, again, done right, good for the animal, but it is also a powerful tool for healing, creativity, and emotional intelligence. Again, done poorly, anthropomorphism can have disastrous consequences. I'm going to close with a quote from the 3rd chapter of Flightways. At this time in Earth's history, there are numerous different paths to extinction, numerous ways to end the possibilities of life for generations of a kind. For many creatures, it is the loss of an important place that leads to their own end. Perhaps the very least we can do is learn a sensitivity to the storying and placemaking practices of these non-human others, a sensitivity that just might provide an avenue to sustaining possibilities of life across species and across generations. Your willingness to learn the stories of birds and their places gives me hope for the future. Thanks for watching, sharing, learning, and especially for caring with us. Let's do our best to enter the eagle's world and the world of all the animals watch by asking a very important question. Who are you? And again, thank you for joining us here today. I hope everyone is having a really good time at our virtual ATF. I miss seeing all of you, and I look forward to seeing you next year.
We are at the end of Amy's presentation. So anyway, thank you very much for tuning in. Definitely interesting about eagles and animals and intelligence, or what part of intelligence we see in them or they see in us. So we are going to stop here, and our next item up on the agenda will be teaching in the classroom with our own Lori Carnes, who's been doing that for over a decade. So we've got a cool presentation with her up at 3 o'clock. Thanks for tuning in, and I was reminded by Amy to let you know that she will be joining